May the forced humor be with you. So Star Wars Episode 8, The Last Jedi, tells the story of the First Order making its final assault on the Rebellion, trying to wipe them out once and for all and destroy light in the galaxy forever. All the while, you have Rey finally meeting up with Luke Skywalker, our hero of this saga, giving him his lightsaber in hopes that he's going to come back to the Rebellion and bring hope to the galaxy. Alright guys, the day is here, and I'm going to go ahead and say this up front in case you didn't read it on my title. This is a 110,000% spoiler-free review. So no worries, I'm not going to get specific on anything. I'm actually planning on doing a spoiler-filled review probably Saturday or Sunday, so keep an eye out for that for all of my specific criticisms and specific things that I really liked about this movie. But for the intents of this video, I'm going to keep things as vague as possible. Right away, let me say that I was a gigantic fan of The Force Awakens. I know the movie has grown to be mixed. It seemed like everybody loved it at first. Now you have people who hate it, you have people who love it, you got people in the middle that thinks some things were good but thinks it was too much like A New Hope. I, for one, think that using A New Hope as a template was the perfect way to relaunch Star Wars, because everybody bitched that the prequels weren't enough like Star Wars, and then you give them a Star Wars movie, now they're bitching that it's too much like Star Wars. So it's one of those tit-for-tat kind of situations. But for 2 years, I have been highly anticipating this movie because I love The Force Awakens so much. It leaves on so many questions, so many directions that you don't know where they're going to go. You got Rian Johnson taking on the director's chair for this movie, who is just a phenomenal director. Love his movie Looper, love all the episodes of Breaking Bad that he did. I saw absolutely no scenario with the pieces in place that The Last Jedi would not at least make it to my number 2 favorite Star Wars movie of all time, maybe even surpass The Empire Strikes Back. Now, when I walked out of the movie theater last night seeing this movie for the first time, I gotta be honest with you, I was really conflicted, really mixed. I had a lot of things that I did not like that they did. I had some things that I liked, but it seems like I was just focusing so much and worrying so much about the things that I didn't like, so I chose not to review this movie after seeing it one time, which is the first time I've ever done that for this channel. Went to go see the movie again today to give it a second chance, kind of let things marinate, walk into it with not as many expectations and knowing what to expect as far as the story, and just seeing what things I liked more and seeing if the things that I didn't like were less egregious the second time around. And I will say, upon second watch, I do like Star Wars The Last Jedi more than the first watch. By about that much. So yeah, cat's out of the bag. I did not love The Last Jedi near as much as I thought I would. Maybe my expectations were too high, but I honestly just think that some of the directions they took in this is going to turn off a lot of fans. It's going to be a very divisive movie. Very divisive. Already you're going to see a lot of things. Best Star Wars ever, worst Star Wars ever. It's going to be a movie people are talking about for a long time. But as far as the positives for Star Wars The Last Jedi, I'm going to go ahead and talk about Rian Johnson, because even though I don't like some of the directions he took the story, he did write this movie as well. As far as his directing duties, I think he did damn near a flawless job as a director, as he often does. I think visually this movie is arguably the best looking of any of the Star Wars movies. You know, they got the CGI that looks very good, but also has that vintage flavor that they did so well in The Force Awakens that they did not do very well in the prequels. You get a lot of great set design, you get a lot of wide camera angles. You can see all of the action from your ground battles to your lightsaber battles to the sky battles and the space battles. All of the directing duties of Rian Johnson, I feel like he brought all of his skills to the table, put it onto this movie, and the movie is better for that. Now, to talk a little bit about Rian Johnson's writing duties for this movie, I think that despite the fact that there's some directions that he took the characters and some of the story elements that overall I didn't really like or agree with, the overall job that he did as far as crafting a story, giving it a beginning, middle, and end, I think that he did masterfully. There's a lot of story themes and tones and just plot elements that kind of plant seeds in the opening act of this movie that pretty much all have a nice little crescendo. They all have a nice full circle journey. They all have a payoff by the third act of this movie. So as far as crafting an overall story that needs to be told and be effective in a 2.5 hour runtime, I think he did a great job as far as that. The only aspect that I think that his writing really faltered in is the humor. It feels like somebody really trying to latch onto that J.J. Abrams style of humor that only J.J. Abrams can really do successfully, because The Force Awakens had plenty of humor in it, and majority of it really landed for me. I remember laughing continuously throughout that movie. A lot of it was because Han Solo is kind of an aloof character and he can really pull off jokes like that. They try to do that with Luke in this movie, and Luke is not that type of character, especially in the way that they portray him in this movie. So I'd say about 70% of the humor in this movie felt completely flat for me. Some of it felt way out of place in the movie. Some of it felt like it was in scenes that did not need humor at all. And that's kind of a criticism that I've harped on a lot with the MCU, which is under the same Disney umbrella. So I don't know if that's a Disney mandate that you have to insert humor into your movie, or if this was just a coincidence that it felt like some of the misplaced humor in the MCU. But if you've seen my reviews before, if you agree with some of my criticism with the humor in the MCU, basically transfer that over to The Last Jedi, and it's the same point that I've been making for a couple of years. Like, there's a joke between Luke Skywalker and Kylo Ren that is one of the greatest parts of the movie. Everybody in the theater erupted into laughter. It's one of the most genuinely awesome character and Star Wars moments in The Last Jedi. At the same movie, you have a scene where you have this giant giraffe snuffleupagus looking thing, and Luke Skywalker walks up to it, grabs it by its tits, and squirts milk into a bottle. And it's meant for comedic relief. Yeah. Now, talking about the characters, which is going to be the meat of this review, because let's be honest, we go to see Star Wars for the characters. It's the characters' journeys, the characters' relationships, parentage, all that good stuff. That is the reason why Star Wars is as great as it is. So let's talk about the characters. Starting off with our classic Star Wars cast. We've got Luke Skywalker, played by Mark Hamill, back finally. We got to see him for like 30 seconds in The Force Awakens. This is the movie where he finally makes his triumphant return. And I'll be honest, there are some aspects of his character that surprise me. I don't know fully yet, even after 2 viewings, if I love what they did with the Luke Skywalker character as far as how he is as a person. But as far as Mark Hamill's performance, not only is this the best performance that he's given as Luke Skywalker, it might be the best thing that he's ever done in his acting career, period.
It's time for the Jedi to end.
He is great in this. Every scene with Luke is captivating. Every time you leave Luke, you want to get back to Luke. He's so good. He's got great back and forth with Rey. He's got really nice scenes with Leia. One of the best moments of the entire movie is an exchange that he has with Kylo Ren. Luke makes this movie for me. And I appreciated how Mark Hamill brought a very new direction for this character. It's a much more emotional version of Luke Skywalker. It's a much more kind of cryptic and a lot more of a damaged version of Luke Skywalker, which supposedly he didn't even really like that direction. That was Rian Johnson and him kind of having a little bit of a clash over who the character is. But luckily, I think they came to a nice happy medium, because Luke Skywalker is basically your emotional anchor in this movie for the most part. He's the guy that you are going to be captivated by. Now you move on to Carrie Fisher, who unfortunately passed away before this movie came out, and she was my main negative, honestly, with The Force Awakens. I thought that it was glaringly apparent that she had not acted in a very long time. Every scene that she was in The Force Awakens was like a brick in the face for me. And thankfully, especially since this is going to be her last performance, I think that she is so much better in The Last Jedi. She's a lot more emotional in this. You can feel the character of Leia. She's a general in this. She's the leader of the rebellion. She is the one who is just carrying the weight of all the death and all of just the treachery that's been going on in this galaxy, and just everything is on her shoulders for the win or for the loss of the rebellion. And you can feel it in Carrie Fisher's performance. You can feel throughout this movie that she keeps the levity, she keeps the heart of who Princess Leia was in the original trilogy, but you can tell this is a battle-hardened woman. This is somebody who is just going as far as possible as she can to stop all of the death of these innocent people and to put an end to the dark side finally. And it just feels like at every turn she fails because the dark side is just so strong. That all comes through in her performance. I like her back and forth very much with Poe Dameron, who's kind of like her first in command. That's kind of the one that really has the most back and forth with her in this movie. Like I said about Luke, she got a really nice scene with him. I like her interaction with the other characters that we get, especially one of the new characters played by Laura Dern, who I'll get into. Really like what they did with General Leia in this movie. Now moving on to the cast that we were introduced to in The Force Awakens, Rey is basically our main hero for this saga. She's kind of like your Luke Skywalker replacement. She is great once again. Daisy Ridley really has a nice charm to her. She's got a really good look on screen. She's got a lot of good back and forth with basically every character that you put her on the screen with. You really feel her heroism. You really feel her internal struggle, which is something that's a big theme in this movie. And it's a character that I really enjoy following. It's a character that I want to see more of. It's a character that I get invested with. And a lot of this movie is put in place, which is not a spoiler, I'm not going to get into details. It's put in place to transition out of our classic Star Wars characters and our classic Star Wars storylines into this new generation, Rey, Finn, Poe, the First Order, all of that. And if she's going to be taking the charge of this new cast, I think they casted perfectly Daisy Ridley in that role.
I've seen this raw strength only once before. It didn't scare me enough then. It does now.
And the character that she has the most interesting back and forth in The Last Jedi is definitely Kylo Ren. Now, Kylo Ren is a really interesting villain. Night and day difference between him and Darth Vader, because Darth Vader was very calm, confident, quiet, and disciplined in his evil, whereas Kylo Ren is like a loose cannon. The guy has just got anger, conflict, emotion, sadness about everything, and he just goes off like a hand grenade over nothing. Very different type of villain for Star Wars, but very kind of a breath of fresh air, honestly. And really his storyline in this movie is just about his internal conflict, which was kind of his storyline in the first movie, and I'll get more into that, where the light is battling the dark. He's pulled to the dark side very strongly, and he wants to be fully consumed by the dark side, but the light side, his parentage of Han Solo and Princess Leia, his dedication to, you know, Luke back in the day, all that stuff is conflicting internally with him. So he's a very internally conflicted character, and Adam Driver does really good about bringing that onto screen. You can see a lot of quietness in his performance, where a lot of stuff is just kind of going on in his head, and then you just see his emotional reaction to it, and he reacts hard on that first emotion. Poe Dameron is the other character that gets the most screen time in this. He's kind of like the wild, witty pilot. He's definitely kind of your replacement for Han Solo as far as his place in the group, because he's the loose cannon. He's the guy that just wants to fly off and blow stuff up. He's the guy that makes the real rash, really quick decisions to try to win a battle, and he's a really entertaining character. I like his back and forth with Princess Leia because she's very kind of strong and quiet and confident about we need to go this way, and he's very wild about no, we need to do this way, we need to blow that shit up, we need to shoot that fucking thing over there. He's just a really entertaining character. His relationship with BB-8 is very similar to the Han Solo and Chewbacca relationship, so I think that whenever this saga continues forward, he's going to be a character that's fun whenever he pops up. I mean, from the very opening scene of The Last Jedi, he opens the movie up with some laughs. He opens it up with some really funny banter that definitely gives you some of that Han Solo stuff that we're obviously going to be missing, being that the character died in the last movie. So he's a very welcome addition to this franchise for me, and I'm glad that he continued that trend on The Last Jedi. Now, as far as our new characters we have never seen before until The Last Jedi, we have three. We have Laura Dern, who is playing basically the second in command to General Leia. She takes over the rebellion for a section of the movie, and I liked her character. I was a little bit mixed on it the first watch. The second watch, I really enjoyed it because she's a very different leader than General Leia. General Leia has this banter to her, this lightness, this little bit of, you know, friendliness to her crew while she's leading them. Laura Dern is that character and that military leader who's very stern and quiet, follow my orders, don't ask me any questions, just do what I say type of leader. And upon first watch, it almost seems like abrasive when you watch her performance and you watch her character. But upon the second watch, I was watching it, and it was just a very refreshing character that just knows exactly how to get as many people to survive this step of this battle as possible. But she just doesn't want to hear anything. She doesn't want to take any shit. She doesn't want Poe Dameron's ideas clouding anything. She wants everybody to listen to her and ask no questions. And I thought that the Laura Dern character was a really interesting piece into that little middle section of the story. Now, the other two new characters, and this is where I'll slide into the negatives as far as characters, you have Benicio del Toro's character, which I don't remember his name. He's basically like a thief or a code breaker. Did not like his character at all. He kind of has this tick and this stutter that was really annoying and didn't add any kind of entertainment or charm to his character whatsoever. But this character to me, and don't read too much into this as a spoiler, but he feels like a blatant answer to Lando Calrissian. As far as the middle chapter of this trilogy, it feels like they needed a character to kind of fill that void, and they just wrote something quick to throw that in there for fan service. And his character does not succeed anywhere near the level that Lando did in The Empire Strikes Back. Not only is he not as captivating as a character and doesn't have the camaraderie that Lando did with Han Solo, Benicio doesn't have that with anybody in this crew, but his character just feels like you could have taken him out completely along with another storyline, which I'm about to get into, and the movie would have been better for it. And the other newest character is this character Rose, who is a shoehorned partner / romantic interest for Finn, and I'll talk about Finn here too, because I'm sure you guys noticed I kind of skipped over him. I love Finn in The Force Awakens. I love John Boyega's performance. I was really looking forward to seeing what they were going to do with this character in The Last Jedi. His section of the movie is the weakest part of The Last Jedi. If I'm being completely honest, you could cut every single one of his scenes, including Rose's scenes, and not only would the movie flow better, the movie would be better altogether for me. I did not like his storyline at all. Essentially what they do with Finn and Rose is they send them on this little side story, side quest where they have to go to this planet to find Benicio del Toro to get somebody that's going to help them get onto this First Order ship to turn off this processor so that they can turn off a tracking beacon so that the rebellion can get away really quickly while they escape. All of that gigantic circle of storyline could have been streamlined with 1 or 2 lines of dialogue. Hey, we need to interrupt this little processor and we can escape. Okay. Pew. 5 minutes later, you're gone. Half an hour of storyline is missing from this movie that the movie did not need, and you could have done something much more interesting with Finn, most of all involving his interaction with Rey at some point, which was the best part of The Force Awakens, in my opinion, was those characters' interaction, and it's non-existent here. And he does not have near the charisma or near the back and forth and the camaraderie and the chemistry with Rose that he did with Rey. Now, Rose is a character. It's not really like she's an egregious character, it's just her place in the story feels so unnecessary. It feels like it's fluff, it's extra. This would be the episode if Star Wars was a 12-episode season that everybody would skip past and say that it was filler. She's here just to have a tag-along buddy for Finn while he goes on this unnecessary journey to pad the movie out with runtime, and then they shoehorn this romance in the very last moments of their characters' screen time on this movie that feels so out of left field and does not feel earned at all. This is not a couple that I want to see going further in the Star Wars saga. Not that I need to see Finn or anybody have a romantic interest at all, but if Finn was going to have a romantic interest with any character, it should have been Rey. They had that kind of chemistry in the first movie. They could succeed just fine if they remained friends for the entirety of their time in this saga, but if they needed a romantic interest, it should have been Rey. Rose just feels superfluous. She feels like she does not belong in this movie, did not like that character, or those two characters' storyline at all. That was the biggest negative of the movie for me. Let's put it this way, as far as the Finn storyline. When I saw it last night for the first time, whenever it got really dedicated to that storyline, there was a good 5 to 6 minutes of this movie where I literally dozed off and fell asleep. And then I woke up and said, oh shit, I sat up and was awake for the rest of the movie. When I saw it today, I fell asleep again. Now this is 11 o'clock in the morning. This is after getting 9 hours of sleep. I walked into the theater, totally wide awake, gets to the same exact spot of the movie, and I fall asleep again. That's not good. Now speaking on storylines that didn't really interest me, essentially you've got about 3 or 4 different storylines all going on at once. You've got Rey and her interaction with Luke Skywalker and her training and everything on this little Jedi temple. You've got the thing with Finn and Rose going off to find somebody to get them on this ship. And then you have Kylo Ren and all of his struggles with Supreme Leader Snoke, with his internal struggles, his interaction with Rey. And then you have this storyline that just involves the overall First Order and the overall Rebellion, where you have these 2 ships, one giant ship carrying everybody from the Rebellion, and a couple giant ships carrying everybody from the First Order. In the entirety of the movie, that storyline is literally these 2 ships traveling at their fastest speed aside from light speed. This ship with the good guys is running out of fuel while this ship is trying to shoot at them but can't get close enough. So the whole movie is just following these 2 ships while this one is slowly running out of fuel so these guys can take them down. And every single time it went back to that storyline, it really feels like the movie screeches to a halt. Alongside the Finn storyline, that was a little bit more entertaining, but still, when you get to it, you're just like, oh, we're still following the ship. There's nothing else going on. They're just floating in space. Could we get back to Rey and the Jedi ship, please? And all of that really just leads to an overall negative with the movie, that there's different storylines and tones and themes all going on at once to where the movie feels kind of uneven as far as its flow. Like you have things like the Kylo Ren stuff and the Rey and Luke stuff that just feels so engaging and you're so interested in it and just flows at a nice little clip. And then you have basically all of the Finn storyline that comes to a screeching halt, some of the Rebellion versus First Order storyline that comes to a screeching halt, and the movie is just constantly changing gears on you to the point where it just doesn't flow altogether. And it doesn't help the fact that this movie is long as hell. Both times when I saw it, I'm looking at the clock like, how fucking long has this Star Wars movie been going on? This is the longest Star Wars movie that has ever been put to screen. And there's some critics that say it move along in a nice little clip and you don't even feel it. I could not disagree more. I felt every minute of that 2.5 hours because of all those changing themes and speeds and flows of the storyline. It is a taxing 2.5 hours. And if you just cut that Finn storyline out, or at least streamlined it or did something better, I'm telling you, that would have made the movie at least a letter grade higher for me. Now, I will give credit where credit is due. This is probably the most unique Star Wars movie of the entire saga. This is the movie that has its own kind of flavor, its own signature look, its own style, and its own direction as far as some of the things that it decides to do with its storyline. You can tell that Rian Johnson got quite a bit of creative freedom in this movie that I wouldn't have expected Disney to give any other director. You could tell that they gave him a lot of liberties to do some things in the story that are very ballsy and very unexpected, as well as putting his own directorial stamp on this movie. It looks like a Rian Johnson movie. It doesn't look like it's this kind of cardboard cutout Star Wars movie that just happens to have Rian Johnson on the poster. It feels like a very unique chapter in this saga, and that's going to be a good thing and a bad thing for a lot of people. If you thought that The Force Awakens was very kind of template and very cookie cutter and it just felt too much like other Star Wars movies, then this is going to be a movie that you're going to enjoy much more, hopefully, if you're not a hypocrite, because it feels completely different than any other Star Wars movie. But at the same time, on the other side of the coin, if you're somebody like me that loved how classic Star Wars The Force Awakens felt and how respectful and how kind of straightforward a lot of the elements of the story went, some of the choices they make in The Last Jedi might and probably will turn you off. And the first aspect of that is just so many of the unexpected directions that they take the story and they take certain characters in The Last Jedi. Now, there's a lot of speculation, a lot of theorizing, a lot of ideas that Star Wars fans and fanatics have rolling around in their head for 2 years before these movies come out, and they have all of these expectations walking in. Was I right about this? Was I wrong about this? Is it going to go this way or that way? Be careful about how strongly you walk into this movie with those expectations and those theories and all of that speculation, because this movie is going to take a lot of directions that you're not going to expect it to. And if you rely too heavily on your own expectations, all those unexpected turns are going to piss you off. Because that happened to me on my first viewing, had to take that out for my second viewing and just absorb the movie for what it was. But even though on the second viewing it wasn't as egregious, some of the choices that they made and some of the unexpected turns, it really feels like a lot of the shocks that they go for, they went for them just for the sake of having shocks in the movie. Some of them don't even really feel completely earned by this movie. It feels like it's there just to shake up the universe a little bit. And longtime Star Wars fans are probably going to have some problems. Again, I'm not getting into any specific details whatsoever. I'll just say that certain questions that were raised by The Force Awakens are not really answered to their fullest potential in this movie. Some of them are kind of skated past, some of them are ignored completely, some of them are given a quick answer that doesn't feel satisfying to me. And the biggest thing that I had as far as an issue of some of these unexpected turns, there are fates of certain characters in this movie that I am not a fan of whatsoever. Again, no details, I'll just leave it at that. But ultimately, the issue that I had with The Last Jedi is that by the end of this movie, with the exception of one character's journey in particular, I feel like the way that we end The Last Jedi isn't much of a progression of the story from the end of The Force Awakens. It feels like there's a lot that should have been done in this movie to really raise the stakes and to really kind of leave us in a spot of either confusion or anticipation for what's to come, or just a lot of just mixed feelings about, oh my God, what's going to happen from here on out? I don't have that feeling when I walk out of The Last Jedi. I had it with The Force Awakens. Whoa, what's going to happen with Kylo Ren? Is he going to come back and be a badass after his training with Snoke? What's going to happen with Luke? Is he going to say something? Is he going to join her? Is he going to be bad? What's going to happen with Rey? What's going to happen with her parents? Who are her parents? Is it Obi-Wan Kenobi? Is it Luke? Is it Han Solo? Is it nobody? All of these questions that made you anticipate The Last Jedi for 2 years, this movie didn't leave a lot of spots like that for me at the end of it. I just kind of went, okay, I'll see you in 2 years, I guess. And here's a good example without getting too spoilery, like Kylo Ren's character in particular. Now, I love his character. I think he's a really interesting villain, but his storyline in this movie is just about his internal conflict. Well, that was his storyline in The Force Awakens, and the place that he ends The Force Awakens is essentially the same place that he ends as far as his internal character in The Last Jedi. And it just feels like even so many aspects of the storyline and character directions and where they are mentally and emotionally, it doesn't feel like there was this big progression in The Last Jedi. And I have a theory about that. Unfortunately, they are already announcing an additional trilogy that's going to be led by Rian Johnson after Episode 9 comes out. We're going to get a 10, 11, and 12 supposedly featuring all these characters, Rey, Finn, Poe, BB-8, all of them. And it feels to me now that they've got so many plans for the future that they're kind of scaling back how far they progress the story of these characters so that they don't run out of things to tell. Whereas George Lucas, when he did the original trilogy, was just planning on a trilogy. He had a finite story that he was going to tell in 3 movies. It feels like an entire arc. It feels like it has a beginning, a middle, and an end. Everything has a purpose. Everything has this destination in mind. I don't feel that with The Last Jedi. I feel like that it's a small progression of character, and it should have been a lot more. And the last thing that I'll say regarding this movie, because I can't really talk about too much more without getting into spoilers, is that going along with kind of unexpected turns, I feel like there's some decisions made with certain characters that feel like giant missed opportunities in this movie. Not to say that the movie has to do the things that I expect it to do, otherwise that it's not a good movie, because that's not fair to the movie at all, but there's certain things that some characters should have done in this, not only for fan service, but just to tell an effective story utilizing those characters that this movie purposely does not do. Again, I know it's very difficult to talk about this movie very vaguely and have my points be very clear, but hopefully when I do my spoiler review, a lot of these things will make a lot of sense, or if you've seen the movie, you know exactly what I'm talking about by being so vague, but there's some missed opportunities in this movie that is a big shame to me. So overall, guys, I am a little disappointed in The Last Jedi because my expectations were so high. Like I said, I saw no scenario that this was not going to be in my top 2 Star Wars movies of all time, being that who was behind the director's chair and writing this thing, and with how awesome The Force Awakens is. But so many really unpredictable choices that they took that didn't sit well with me. Some story flow problems, too long of a movie, one storyline in particular that should have been cut from the movie altogether. It just really brought down a movie that is beautifully shot, beautifully crafted, has great character moments, has a really nice kind of segue from old Star Wars into new Star Wars, which I feel like classic fans of Star Wars are going to be cool with, and new fans of Star Wars are also going to be along for the ride with. It's not going to feel like, no, bring back all the classic stuff. I don't care anything about Rey and Finn. Get them off the screen. Just give me the classic stuff. It doesn't feel like that at all. It really feels like a natural transition of generations, from Star Wars generation of old to Star Wars generation of new, and overall the movie succeeds on that. It just should have been a lot better. So if you're a Star Wars fanatic, you've already seen the movie, so I don't know why you're waiting for me to tell you to go see it, but I do recommend you go see this. Just maintain your expectations, maintain a lot of the theories that you have when you walk into this, because there's so many unexpected turns and really interesting decisions made that I don't think is going to please everybody. It's going to be a very divisive movie, so check it out in theaters at a matinee. So what do you guys think about Star Wars The Last Jedi? Did this movie meet all of your anticipation and your expectations, or did you feel a little bit conflicted and mixed on it like I did? Did you see it a second time like I did, or do you just have the one theater viewing? Put all of your thoughts on Star Wars The Last Jedi down in the comment section below, guys, and we'll talk about it. And be sure to keep an eye out this weekend, because I got a ranking of the entire Star Wars franchise coming out probably tomorrow, and then of course my spoiler-filled review, which I'll be able to get into all the nitty-gritty details about this movie and get a lot more specific with my criticisms and things that I like, so keep an eye out for that. Please make sure you see the movie before you watch it. I don't want to ruin the experience for you. Put all of your thoughts down below, guys. Like, share this video. Hit that subscribe button if you're not already a subscriber. If you want to check out my social media links, I got Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter down in the video description below, as well as the link to my Patreon page, which is a great way to build this channel and support this channel to get exclusive content for your eyes only if you decide to become a patron. And if you want to check out some more of my videos, guys, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.